Please ignore the gnarly scratch on my arm there. I got in a fight with my freezer drawer earlier this morning. Piece of shit. Yeah, you stay like that. Hello Internet, this is Olin from What I'm Listening To. I hope you all are continuing to stay safe, stay healthy, keeping those hands nice and clean, and not overstocking your freezer so stuff falls behind it so you can't close it, so you have to take it apart to get the thing and then scratch the shit out of yourself and then have a hard time putting the thing back together. But I'm not mad about it at all. No, I'm fine. It is currently October 24th, 2021. It's a really, really stormy day outside, and I am staying indoors with a cup of coffee here, and we're going to be talking about some new additions. But for this iteration, we're going to be talking about albums that came out this year. These are all CDs that are brand new and some of my personal favorites from this year so far. You know how this show works. Let's jump right into them. And the first CD I have for you today, I have Torres, Thirstier by Torres. Fridays are the days when new stuff comes out, and on those days we'll pick out a selection of albums to play in store as a way to promote them. And on July 30th, we played this album, and I was really captivated by it. It was much more rock sounding than I expected it. For some reason, I thought this person was more poppy, but the moment I heard the first track on this album, Are You Sleepwalking?, I was sold. In fact, that's the song I've been listening to over and over again from this album. I can hardly get by it. I have to listen to it at least 3 times. But the rest of the album is really great too. Don't Go Puttin' Wishes in My Head has an amazing chorus and fantastic production, and other songs in the album even dive into a bit poppy elements. It's not strictly rock, but it still sounds excellent. So if you have not listened to this album, I definitely recommend checking it out. It sounds fantastic, and I'm curious more about her stuff. I'll probably have to listen to her other albums too. Baby, you might be sleepwalking. The thought of it's pretty sweet. Next up, I have the Sleigh Bells' newest album, Texis. I've been a big fan of this band ever since they put out their first album, Treats. In fact, this might be the first noise pop band I'd ever listened to. For those of you who don't know, the Sleigh Bells are a duo, and they basically take 2 opposing genres, sugary, sweet bubblegum pop and heavy metal, and they blend it together, and it just turns into this extremely noisy, chaotic, yet sugary, sweet sounding music. I absolutely recommend checking out their first 2 albums. They're some of my favorite noise pop music out there. But on Texis, they seem to be straying a little bit away from the noisier elements in favor for a cleaner sound. There's still really poppy melodies and poppy vocals. There's chugging heavy metal guitars, but it just sounds a lot more digestible compared to the brash stuff they were doing early on. Yet, as a fan of the band, I still really enjoyed this album. In fact, it's really the first album of theirs I've listened to in a long time. I held off on listening to their previous 2 albums, Jessica Rabbit and Kid Khrushchev, and it's probably because I just wasn't interested in hearing more of their stuff at the time. But with the release of this one, I am now more apt to check those out. So once I'm done listening to this one, I'll go check those. But in the meantime, definitely recommend this band. They are really cool. Start with their first albums and work your way up, because this stuff is much different from the earlier stuff. Next up, I have the newest BadBadNotGood album. This is Talk Memory. I love this band, and I'm so happy that they're still making music despite the fact that their piano player left the band a couple years back. This one kind of came out of nowhere for me. I didn't realize it was coming out until I walked into work one day and was told, hey, we got the new Bad Bad Not Good. And even though I had not heard a single thing off of it, I grabbed a copy immediately just because I knew I would enjoy it. Unlike their previous albums, which combined jazz and hip-hop, this one is a little more on the psychedelic, even new age side of things. And I think what really contributes to that is the fact that they worked with folks like Arthur Verocai, Laraji, and Floating Points. It's a much more atmospheric sound for the band, but it's still very jazzy, still very complex, and still very, very good. It really just goes to show how talented the members of the band are. They're pushing their limits, they're trying to see what else they can do with their music, and I am all for it. So if you fancy yourself some modern jazz with a psychedelic twist to it, then definitely check this album out. It is really, really good. Staying on the topic of Floating Points, the next album I have for you today, I have the Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and London Symphony Orchestra collaboration. I know I'm a little late to be talking about this album in a video, but my god guys, this album is just so good. Floating Points is a project fronted by Sam Shepard, who has created numerous albums incorporating electronica, ambient, and a little bit of jazz. And sax player Pharoah Sanders was impressed by his work and eventually befriended Sam and proposed they make music together. So with Sam on electronics, Pharoah on sax, and the good people from the London Symphony Orchestra on strings, they created this wildly beautiful, psychedelic, just gorgeous sounding album. This is the kind of music you put on a rainy day, a day like today. You curl up in bed with a cup of coffee, turn off all the lights, listen to the sound of the rain in the background, and just completely vibe out to this. It's an album that's easily a highlight of 2021. In fact, this might be one of my top 10 albums of the year. If you haven't listened to this album, then you need to do yourself a favor and check it out immediately. It is so very good. You don't even have to be a fan of jazz or electronica. It's just solid music as a whole, and you will not regret experiencing it. The next CD I have for you today, I have Julia Shapiro's newest album, Zorked. Julia Shapiro is best known for being the front woman to Chastity Belt, which is an excellent band, and this right here is her second solo album. I was a big fan of her first studio album. In fact, it's amongst my top 10 albums of 2019. So when I saw she released this one, there was no doubt in my mind that I had to grab it. Usually when it comes to solo albums, especially when the person is in a band I really like, I'm a bit hesitant at first because I'm not sure if it's going to be nearly as good as their full band effort. But Julia's music has proved me wrong. What I love about it is it's so hazy, fuzzy, noisy guitars. Her vocals are so atmospheric, and it's just, it sounds a little more stripped back compared to the Chastity Belt stuff, but she just makes it work so well. I'm so glad she's continuing to make music on her own, and at this point I'll listen to whatever she puts out. So check this album out if you like Chastity Belt, or if you like hazy rock music. This is right up your alley. Next up, I have the newest Parquet Quartz album, Symphony for Life. Yet another band I've been following for a while now, and seeing their new studio album, I just had to get it. They are one of the premier art punk bands out there. They remind me so much of what the Talking Heads were doing back in the late 70s, early 80s. Making really complex yet fun and bouncy sounding music, and just pushing themselves more and more with every release. This one's actually an interesting one because they've incorporated a lot more synths and electronics to the mix, which is something we haven't heard from this band before. It's a different flavor of their music, but at the core they still sound like themselves. But honestly, I trust this band. Much like BadBadNotGood, anything these guys put out, I am totally willing to listen to. I think they're just really talented musicians, and anywhere they go, I think they'll knock it out of the park. So if you're a fan of the Talking Heads, art punk, or just want some fun music to listen to, then check this album out. And hey, check out the rest of their albums too. I think if you like this, you'll like the rest of their stuff.
Rebel soldiers, freedom fighters, some would say, charging cable, offered as a sign of peace, waiting for a stranger on a crowded street, urban living, standards rising constantly.
All right, we are down to the final CD, and this is the one I'm most excited about. I have Grouper's newest album, Shade. I love Grouper so much. Ever since I discovered her album, Dragging a Dead Deer Up a Hill, I immediately became a huge fan. And I've got a pretty decent collection of her CDs. The only ones I'm really missing are some of her early works, which are kind of rare and expensive to buy CD copies of, but one day, I'll get them. As a teaser for this album, she released the song Unclean Mind on her Bandcamp, and I just got severely addicted to it. And it's a really simple track too. It's just acoustic guitar and harmonizing vocals, but even those elements alone, she makes this really hauntingly beautiful sounding song. In fact, a lot of the tracks on here are just her playing acoustic guitar, which is kind of harkening back to her older material. On her last two albums, it was just her on piano and vocals, but this one, she goes back to the acoustic guitar, goes back to the drony ambient sounding stuff, and it just sounds better than ever. And talk about great rainy day music. Grouper's work is stuff I always consciously put on anytime I have to walk or drive through the rain. So as you can imagine, I'm gonna be listening to this one a lot today because it is really storming out there. If you haven't listened to Grouper's music, then I absolutely recommend checking out everything by her. You literally cannot go wrong with any of her albums. This right here is easily one of my favorite releases of 2021. I am so excited that she has made new music, and I hope she continues doing so. All right, internet, that does it for me. Hey, if you have any 2021 albums you're really into right now, let me know what they are. Leave a comment down below. If you also like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll show me the support and I'll love your face for it. And you can also follow me on Instagram for even more music. I post a new album on there semi-frequently, talk a little bit about it, and it gives you a bit of an insight of what else is in my collection. So thank you all so very much for watching. This is Olin from What I'm Listening To signing out. Goodbye.